Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session to meditate. I hope all of us have had a great holiday, no holiday weekend last week. And today, let's continue the journey of the inner exploration. It's not difficult to learn the technique to meditate for a while, but it can be challenging to understand what is meditation. We always want to know how, but we rarely want to know what it is. But when one really knows what is meditation, what is life, one won't ask how to meditate. How implies a method, a system method, or discipline, or doctrine. People always want to learn some method. But is there a method to live life or not? Let's question it together. For most people, their mind is very mechanical. For such a mechanical mind, method is very important. To have a method to meditate, to have a method to get rid of the mental challenges, all kinds of troubles. So we caught up. But we had to question it carefully about our life. When we are seeking methods, seeking solutions, we are looking for some sort of authority, any kind of a psychological authority to tell us how can I be better? How? But the very way to have the authority on the mind blocks oneself from truly understanding oneself. Look at this whole world. In all kinds of sort of forms, people are establishing all kinds of authorities to control, to influence. And for many people, they tend to believe or tend to follow some sort of authority for the sense of security or for other similar reasons. But to understand ourselves truly, we can only be ourselves, be alone. Because nobody else can really understand my challenges. Except myself, right? Because I can only communicate these issues with other people by verse, by any kind of verbal communications. But for the things deep here on the mind, in the heart, most of which are beyond language. I can feel it strongly, I can feel it, I can perceive it, but I can't tell you because it's just impossible to describe it. So it means that I have to be alone to learn about myself, because I have the greatest tool ever. That's the perception. I can perceive it. And this is the journey of the inner exploration. And we call it meditation. Just understand the self thoroughly. Just understand how the mind works thoroughly. Just understand the relation between me and everything around me, and what is me. Why has me created so much mischief? Or have I observed the mischief made by the me? Can I live life without me? To answer questions, not verbally answer it, but truly answer it, is to meditate, to figure out everything, to see them clearly. So before we start today's session, so let's keep silent for 3 or 4 minutes to quieten down the mind first. Then let's come back together for such an exploration. what is listening? Have you ever listened to somebody attentively? Which means that when we are listening to somebody, we give our full attention to it. To listening with a full attention is quite an art, which means that we have to listen to somebody carefully to understand what one means behind those words. At the same time, we notice our reaction to the words. For many people, they have the impression that to listen to somebody is to listen to the words. Which seems to be very easy, is it? Because most of us are attached to words in many ways, aren't we? For most people, the mind is the words, and the words are the mind. Words are a bunch of symbols, like pictures. They are similar in some sense. They are the carriers of the thoughts. Without these symbols, how can we think? Think in detail. And for most people, thoughts have played such an important role in life. And those are inseparable from words, the language. Have you ever really tried to understand somebody? Or we simply understand somebody by the words, fully depending on the words? Have you ever realized that words are not thin at all? Here, let's go slowly, a little bit, to have a look at the language. There are numerous types of languages on this planet. I guess many people can speak many languages, one or two. For people living in Europe, it is very common. Language has played such a role in life. But have you ever really examined the role of language? The relationship between me and the language? To meditate is to question everything. It's not about accept it or deny it, but just inquire into it. To figure out what is that? Here, what is language? Language has played such an important role on this global culture, right? Because words are carrying over the thoughts. To have this kind of very complicated mental construct like culture and ideology, we can't live without languages. It's easy to analyze this externally because languages are everywhere. Here, when we ask ourselves, what's the relation between the language and me? It means inwardly. For this stuff, the mind, the brain, what role the language should have, and what role does language have? This might be a very subtle inquiry, but it is very important, very essential, because as you might have noticed that a lot of our mental challenges are strongly related to languages. To some extent, the language has been weaponized, right? It can be used to praise somebody. It can be used to hurt somebody as well. To have this clear relationship between the mind and the language, we have to inquire into language carefully. Do we? Languages are a bunch of symbols. Like in Chinese, it's kind of a character, like pictures, but they're still symbols. Probably in the past 10,000 years, even longer, the human beings, because this, the development of the brain, we can use a lot of symbols to represent something. We can use this symbol to represent a stone. We can use that symbol or the combination of different symbols, make a word to describe that kind of tree or flower. A sentence to express more. So we use something else, some symbols here to represent something. And between you and me, for example, we need to agree on this. Or else, if for this symbol I mean this, you mean that, we can't really speak to each other. So the language is a great version between or among a group of people, theoretically. To be able to speak to each other. So the symbols can represent something similar. In that case, we can have some simple communication. But for most of us, of course, we are never the creators of languages. We are only the users. Because the usage of it is imposed on us. It's passed on to us by our parents, by the last generations. We never question or ask what is language and how language is formed, but we just keep using it on a daily basis, right? Even at each moment when you are thinking, the mind is still chattering in languages. But when we are using languages, have we ever really noticed the limitation of it? For example, if I say a cup, I want to drink something, a cup. What kind of image pops up in your mind when hearing this word? Functionally, whenever you hear this word, it points to something similar. It's a container that can hold some liquid like water, or beer, or wine, whatever. But the image about it can be very different. Maybe the first thing go into your mind is some kind of cup in a red color, or very big ones, and that cup, that image of it, in my mind, is something very small and in blue color. For this kind of daily communication, language has no such a big hassle, because we don't care about the shape of it. We only care about the function of a cup. And so in most cases, for this kind of communication, it is still acceptable. No leading to much misunderstanding. But when we are communicating about some thoughts, some deeper feelings, the language began to show its limitations. For all of the mental activities, it can be very tricky and challenging to describe by verse. For people living in the same culture, they have similar mental tendencies or activities. It gives people an impression that the language can really help people to communicate deep. But as the society is becoming more and more individual, this kind of deep communication is becoming hard. And we also need to question that it's really deep enough. If it's really deep enough, probably we don't need to have this session to meditate. For a lot of communication, for the inner communication, we have a lot of subtle mental activities which is beyond the verse. Why it is beyond the verse? It's come back to the representation, right? We use symbols to represent something, and so the language is a compromised communication. Because all of us has mapped the mental activities to some verse. It's a reduction, isn't it? we reduce the mental activities to a few, not few, just those languages or words to communicate. But there are so many subtle mental activities which just simply can't be described. For a lot of mental challenges, for example, very subtle, very maybe a little strange, or whatever you can see. You can't find a verse about it. You can only feel it, to perceive it. And it can't be communicated too much. It might be on some levels, but it can't be fully communicated. But if for this inner exploration, if we still attach to verse for an explanation, for understanding, it might lead to greater misunderstanding. Back to the question. Have we really ever understanding somebody? Or can we see somebody without a verse? Just like when we are walking in a park and we stump on a tree, a very big tree. Can we look at the tree without any verse? For many people, when they see the tree, they begin to figure out, oh, what's the name of the tree? Which species does this tree belong to? Have you ever noticed that? In front of the tree, we began to use verse. The verse has dragged us into thoughts already. Have you ever tried looking at the tree without any verse? Just simply look at it. Similar to a person, to a friend, to your family around you, or to anyone you are trying to understand. Can we look at somebody, not through any words and images? Just look at that person as they are. You might have found that the language has become such a part of life. Even the moment when we are looking at something or somebody, the verse together with the thoughts just pop up. becoming a wall between the body, me, and the thing. We understand somebody by words. We judge somebody by words. We look at things also through words. Thinking in words, even when we don't speak, the mind is still talking, self-talking. To do this, to do that. Okay, I need to do this now. Oh, next time I need to do that. Have we really ever noticed this kind of chattering on the mind? Like now, we are doing the meditation here. Are you listening to your mind, or are you listening to the words? When we are only listening to the words, it is inevitably getting caught up in the thoughts or in the reaction to the words. Then we don't have the chance to really understand what's the meaning behind the words, which is about how the mind works, what is the nature of mind. To listen with full attention is not to get caught up in words. Instead, we give full awareness to the reactions to the words. At the same time, to examine the mind, to figure out what's the meaning behind those words people are speaking. But across this globe, no matter in which country, in which culture, most people couldn't really listen to each other with attention. Most people are caught up in words, in the illusions, mental images triggered by words. Language has its place, right? It should function where it should function. But for most people's life, we over-rely on the languages to express, to speak, feeling like we are communicating. But we are just caught up in the reaction to words, which give us the pleasure and also the pain. Probably you have noticed that how polarized this world is, not only politically, culturally, also deeply unmined mentally. We are living in a polarized society than ever before. Thanks to the words, right? Thanks to the language. We all divided by this, by the reaction to the words, to languages. Look at the internet, the social networks. All kinds of images, words are used to hook people to keep people in the loop, to entrap people in the loop. People are becoming more and more individual. The society is becoming more and more divided and in the verse, in the illusions, leading to more and more self-deception. That's why we meditate, right? That's why it's so important to meditate. To empty the mind immediately. The mind which is caught up in verse, in phrases, in images, to empty that mind, to restore the mind to nature, to set the mind free. A free mind is an innocent mind. Which means that the mind has no hurt. The mind has no illusion. So before we have a few more open discussion, it's time for us to meditate. So let's take some breath meditation. Maybe you have your own method. Just do it. It's important to invite us back to this moment, to empty the mind. Now, let's follow the audio guide to meditate.
Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. While you are listening to the bell, check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly, bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes.
So, to meditate is to understand, not through words, but through the observation, where there's no observer. To understand the mind, not through words, not through images, not through asking how, but through inquiring what is. So now it's time for any questions or anything people want to talk about or mention or broach a discussion.
Can I ask something?
Please.
You said meditation is to observe, but without an observer.
Yes.
I think this is a key, but to understand. If there is no observer, there is something else. And what is this else? It's another part of us, or how can we? Okay, we try to understand with words and with thoughts, but maybe we must feel it. Yeah?
It's impossible to describe it in words. We can only try to approach it in a way, say, to observe without being an observer. The mind is to be aware. Oh. The mind is to be aware of something. Not you are aware of, not I am aware, but it's the mind to be aware of something. That awareness indicates there's no observer, but only awareness, only observance. So we probably need to inquire into who am I? What is me? For most people, they always look at the world from the center. That center is called me. Oh, I see it. I notice it. What is me? Me is a bunch of thoughts or mental images, right? Like the old things about one's past. position, family, money, all kinds of things. Title, perhaps marriage, perhaps the diploma, degree, and all kinds of things. It's about this kind of image about the self. And when we look at things, it is easy, it's very easy for people to look at things with their images. But can we look at everything without those images of the me? Can we just feel it? Just like when you look at the mirror, can you not recognize yourself? Well, perhaps after this session, everybody can try it to see yourself in the mirror. Can you not recognize yourself? You might find out how quickly the mind is to recognize yourself. Then the self is triggered already. But we can try to do that if you are interested. Just look at the mirror. Can we look at the image of that person in the mirror without recognizing it? The very way of looking at that is the very way to looking at the mind. It's difficult to really to talk about it. No matter how hard we try to speak about it, it always leads to all kinds of misunderstanding. Unless one simply walk out of words and just observe oneself without being the observer, when we'll get it.
Like we observe in another way, not the usual way, as we observe with thoughts. I guess it is when there are no thoughts and there are no problems in the mind,
No.
then it's not that, huh?
No. Of course, no. You are right. Please continue.
So I guess when the mind is quiet and you look at the problem, okay, I have a way to, when I work on a problem, like if it is a difficult problem, I say, okay, so I don't try to solve, and I just look at it without trying to solve it. And then sometimes the solution pops up. So it's this way of observing something like this, the way you are talking. Is it something related to that? Like without really trying hard to find an answer.
So the session has been disrupted by some kind of a malicious attack from the internet. That's crazy, isn't it? Oh.
Yeah, I have never seen something like this.
Yes, next time we need to lock the room because the meeting has been made too open, so everybody can join the meeting and no, there's so many people not joining it. They are all malicious attackers. Oh, that's crazy.
I don't know if you heard my question before.
Probably your question has been overwhelmed. Probably your question has been overwhelmed by the attackers, so I didn't hear it.
Yes. Yeah, I said this way of looking without the self being involved into this looking. It's like I have an experience when I try to solve a problem, and then instead of trying hard, it's like I observe the problem. I look at it, and with this kind of not myself being involved very much, just looking, and then sometimes the solution pops up. Solution comes. So maybe it's something similar.
It might be similar, but it's difficult to really confirm it by words. But if you feel it, it's probably that way. So when we work off the so when we really work out that self-centered view or angle, like when you are solving a problem, the very way to work out that self-centered view, open the mind to an immense space where the mind is free, because the mind is free from the self. It's free from the mischief made by the self. In that freedom, the mind is able to offer any solutions to anything. In that freedom, the mind is innocent, means that the mind is free from hurt. As you said, all the hurt are all thought related.
It also sounds to me a little bit like the mind is not involved. Or maybe I'm...
It's really depends on you how to define the mind. But I guess both means the same, right? Without involve, because probably to Bob, that's my guess, that mind means a bunch of thoughts or the consciousness. But you see, it's very difficult to really to verbally communicate over this. It's up to everybody to feel it without seeking any confirmation, which means that everybody has to be totally alone, totally independent to perceive it. And then even we don't speak to each other, we don't communicate verbally, we understand each other.
Thank you.
Anything from Bob or Anna?
No questions here, thank you.
Okay, Ari, it was a very good question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
So, great. Thanks for being here tonight to spend last 1 hour together meditating. And also have this interesting malicious attack from the internet. So it's a really a marvelous side to hopefully everybody enjoy it.
Yes. Thank you very much.
And again, hope everybody stay peace, safe, and joyful, and enjoy each day. And hopefully we can see each other again in the future sessions.
Yes. everyone be well. Week, and hopefully the week after we'll see each other again. Thank you, Mexico, and everyone attending.
And thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.